This is my web series called Breaking Bread. Uh,
Yeah.
and really the premise of it is that, I've been through this MBA process over the last few years.
Yep.
And through that, I've kind of met some dope ass people who are kind of trendsetters, people that are just taking gambles on themselves and
Right.
kind of going to some industries that maybe not many people know about. And so I really wanted to highlight them, and really kind of give some backstory to them and kind of, highlight their story
Yeah.
and give them this platform. But then also ultimately, the goal here is to bring more people to the table and also to this backstory. So I'm going to University of Michigan, Ross. See, Owen's going to Columbia, if you haven't seen from my sweatshirts.
What's really good? You know, we repping. We pay too much to not rep.
What we'll get into is what the last, I guess 9 months will really look like. I guess since we joined the Reader programs, which is essentially a program that gets minority kids. They really help them and propel them to get into some of these top business schools.
Yeah.
Me and Owen met, and we
In grand fashion.
we left. When we left Reardon, I think a bunch of us joined. We had a group chat called the 160 Quant Club.
Yeah.
I think only one of us got a 160.
Who actually got to the 160 then?
Who's going to UCLA. Our group got into business schools.
Yeah.
And we didn't, we obviously were striving for the 160, but at the end of the day, like that support group was really what got us in, because we were all giving each other information, even if it wasn't like, I would give you information, even if it wasn't for the benefit of me. And, I think, based on our history, you would think that like, oh, we're all fighting for the same spot because we're all minorities, but we flipped it. And we were like, nah, we're going to help each other out. And how it all worked out is that we all got into all these different business schools, top 10 business schools or whatever you may call it.
Doing it. And so I think that's something that people, I think the attitude is changing, but I think people really historically before used to think in that same line of thinking of like, we're vying for these spots. And it's like, man, this is a big pull. Like me helping you only sharpens my sword. So like we're really just making each other stronger, and these things they're gonna work out for themselves, right? And sure enough, they really did.
This is Owen Adigie, my fellow Brooklyn native.
Let's go.
They don't know this yet, but you have a really interesting story, and I think that's what I really want to highlight. And so if you could give us a little bit of background about yourself, when you were born in Brooklyn, and where'd you go from there, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, so even before I was born, I think it's pretty important to highlight my parents' journey. So both of my parents were, born and raised in Nigeria, grew up there, grew up in more of a rural city, like more of a village. It's called Benin City, which is actually a pretty prominent kingdom at some point in history. And kind of like Rome now, Benin City is just like an old city. After high school, my dad came to America in the 80s. So he immigrated to America. My mom immigrated to the UK and lived in London. And they both went and got their college degrees at those respective countries. My parents then linked back up. Then fast forward later, I end up being born in Brooklyn, New York. And so I'm always shout out to New York. I mean, that's a whole full circle of me now being here at Columbia. It's really amazing to think how life actually works, and like how so much of it you don't even realize, like almost feels like it's bigger than you, but these things all kind of end up connecting. So anyway, so I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And then I lived in London because, that's where my mom went to college. And so she had a very big foundation there and wanted to live there. So I lived in London for 5 years until I was about 5. Then my parents decided it was time to go back to Nigeria. And so I lived in Nigeria until I was like 9 or 10. And in Nigeria, I lived in Lagos, Nigeria, which is like the major city there. And then, when I was like 9 or 10, we moved to America. My dad had a business in Nigeria at the time. Things kind of got, turbulent. And so I think for him, he always had in the back of his head, like, I eventually want my kids to go have a U.S. education at some point. And so the business kind of crumbled, and then he was like, let's do it. So my whole family, all 6 of us, we all moved to the U.S. We moved to Southern California. And from pretty much the fourth grade all the way through college, I lived in Southern California. I lived somewhere in Southern California. I went to college at CSU San Bernardino, studied finance, and made it to Goldman Sachs right out of school. Worked there for 2 years. I was doing internal finance and financial analysis. Then worked at Wells Fargo for about 2 years, 2.5 years or so, doing corporate banking.
Like ultimately, then you end up leaving banking.
Yeah.
And it was one of those where like, I could tell you just like, nah, I'm just ready to bet on myself. I think I've got enough information from these people and I'm ready to do it. So can you kind of talk to us a little bit about how that shaped out?
Yeah. So, actually, I think it's good context to give here as well, if I can. In high school, I was like not a great student by any standard. I was a terrible student. Like I was C average. Barely made it to college, and by barely I mean like inches. I got accepted to one school out of the 9 that I applied to, and so I got there. But the reason why I bring up that story is that at the very tail end of my high school career, tail end of being in high school, I had done this little entrepreneurial activity. So pretty much what I had done was, our student government each year normally sells our t-shirts for pep rallies, but my senior year, ours sucked. And like everybody was like annoyed by that. And so one day I was going to a financial aid night and I was just like, I bet you I could like make some shirts that are cool. Like, I didn't really think much of it. And I ended up like telling my dad, he's like, okay, I'll give you like a loan, but you have to pay me back. And he's like, consider this your first business transaction. And at the time, I didn't really realize that I've been exposed to business because of my parents, because my dad had been a business person. They ran a small business in Southern California. And so, even as I'm telling you now, I'm really just thinking to like how simple but powerful that was.
Yeah.
And so he ends up giving me this loan. I go make these t-shirts and, I think I'm going to sell like maybe 20 of them, whatever. I end up selling them to like 150 students, right? I made them for $6, but sold them for 13. And like, it was doing all the, and like nobody told me to do all that, but it just like intuitively had kind of like put together, this is it. And that goes back to that point of being like grown up in cities and grown up in all these different places. Like,
right.
Even though I didn't really realize it at the time, like those were already baked into me. I understood what that meant and like marketing and all these other business fundamentals. So the crucial part of the story is that an econ teacher of mine saw me do this. And one day he pulled me aside and I actually thought I was in trouble because I was like a bad student. And he was like, listen, you have an eye that most people do not have in this class. Like the fact that you did this, and like, you were able to understand what it means to like supply and demand, making a margin, a profit margin on this. He was like, you have a really good eye. What do you want to do when you go to school? I was like, I don't know. I think I said something like psychology. He was like, listen. You have a fundamental understanding of business and you need to go pursue business. Go do what you're doing as your undergrad. But after undergrad, you should work on Wall Street. And in order for you to get to Wall Street, you need to go get your MBA. And in order for you to get your MBA, you should go to, like a school in New York. And I think at the time he had told me NYU. And so he gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read that book.
Fantastic.
Read a bunch of other books, right? And I'm 16, right? And I've never thought about any of these things before. And it just completely changed my frame of mind. And at that moment, it's like, I understood it all kind of just clicked. I was like, holy cow, like this is what I'm meant to do. Like it's supposed to be in business, all this and that. School backed me up and I was resourceful and I connected with people and made a bunch of, took advantage of a bunch of different opportunities and ended up securing a job at Goldman Sachs upon graduation. I do think it's important for me to highlight really quick that part of me securing that, just to show people like the grind is for real and like you got to do what you got to do. I had flown from Southern California to Atlanta to go to an NBA conference, the National Black NBA.
Yeah.
Never been to Atlanta before. Didn't know. I just booked the ticket because I knew like a bunch of companies were going to be there. And I was like, this is my chance to get in the door. And that's where I met people at Goldman, people at SunTrust Bank, all these other opportunities. And even then, when I went back home, at the time I lived 2 hours from UCLA. I drove to UCLA twice and snuck into the career fair. Like actually like legit snuck in.
Yeah.
Made some contacts at Wells Fargo. And so I'm telling you all this because obviously I then went on to work for Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo. And those were how I met. That was how I broke into those things, was flying across the country to go to a conference and then sneak into UCLA's career fair. So you got to be creative and, willing to do what, and what's within the boundaries of right, although you can be a little resourceful about it. I started at Goldman, great institution, great name, whichever have you. Was just not really finding like satisfaction in it. It was great. I worked with really smart people, really motivated people, enjoyed that. So then I went to Wells Fargo, also there, really great, really smart, learned a lot. But I just found myself, and I remember the day exactly, I had worked on a credit transaction for this private equity company. And we had like a 2-week deadline. We were working like crazy. It was Friday. I was at work 1 a.m, and we closed the deal. It was all done. And, you're supposed to feel like this moment of like, yeah, I closed the deal, like money. And all I could feel was just like, what did I just spend 2 weeks just busting my ass for? Like, what? All I did was transfer money from one rich person to another rich person. And frankly, one rich white person to another rich white person, right? And so it was just like, what am I doing? Like, I couldn't answer that question in a way that was satisfying enough for me. And so I very much got very disgruntled about it. And so every day I was thinking about it. And one day I just decided like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I just left and I just like quit. I had got my bonus and I was like, okay, like I think my manager had actually like pissed me off at that moment. I was like, you know what? Like, life is too short for all of this. and I just left. I will be honest too, like I only quit without having a job because I just got my bonus. So like I got a lot of money and then I projected out like, okay, I could at least live comfortably, pay rent, take care of what I need to for the next 6 months if I don't find a job. And so at that point, like the math made sense. And so I did that. And so I do think that is important. Like, I don't want to like encourage anybody to like, if you're struggling financially, don't just quit your job. Like,
encourage people to be, to think about the money as well, because I think a lot of people, there are people who do live paycheck to paycheck, and I get that.
Right.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and a lot of books will tell you too, like, you just got to put $5 away, $10 away, whatever you could put away.
Exactly.
Rainy day fund.
Yeah.
That you could last at least 3 to 6 months.
Right.
But obviously your bonus afforded you that, but I imagine you had some money as well on the side.
Yeah.
Thing as well. So like, that's the key to get to that point where like, you could do that.
Right. And a pro tip, like, even because I don't want it to like mislead that it was just my bonus that carried me over. To your point, every paycheck I got, immediately I was always putting like 25 or 20% of it into my savings and another like 10% of it into the market, right? So I was building that up over time. And so it's not like I've always just had like this idea of like, you always got to prepare for this and always prepare for that. And so that was super fundamental. So like that goes to the point of why it's important to learn about how money works, because it helps you. And it affords you that luxury to then go soul search.
Yeah. And I think
I had obviously thrown events, and so I was like, maybe I should get into the entertainment space. Was really thinking a lot about that, what that would look like and what kind of roles I could do. I was thinking a lot about tech. I was thinking a lot about, because I'm coming from finance, so I do have the ability to be a little bit flexible. So I was thinking about a lot of different things, or even starting my own event company. Actually, and we had talked about that. And ultimately, you know, I wasn't really sure quite yet, but a friend of mine, I happened to apply to a place. A friend of mine happened to work there and was like the VP of sales. And he called me up. He's like, hey, I saw you applied. Are you interested? And so we had a conversation and it made sense. And I was like, okay, this sounds like a pretty good gig. Like, let's do it. So I ended up getting into advertising sales. So I did that for a while in downtown Los Angeles. And that was a unique experience. You know, I think it was, you know, reflecting on that, it was very different from obviously like a finance job and what was required and what the day-to-day was. So I did that for a little while. But I guess I want to go back to the reflection part. The reflection was a mix of me truly reflecting, but it was also like a hard grind because I got to the second month and I was like, oh wait, I don't have a job. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, what's going on? Like, you know, it's a little bit of like panic, but like you still have to kind of ride that wave out. And so, you know, I ended up getting that job with this company I was talking about and ended up being 3 months. And it was like 3 months to the day actually. So that just goes to let you know that also like things aren't gonna like, I don't want to sit here and tell you like everything is rosy and pretty. Like, yo, shit got crazy. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on. I do need to get a job at some point. You know what's going on? I got laid off in March. I started a job in January. I got laid off in March. And it was like a huge shock to the system, right? Because like, I mean, you know, just my professional experience, I worked at Goldman for 2 years. I worked at Wells Fargo for like 2.5 years. You know, I get to this place and 2 months in, I get laid off. And I was like, whoa, what just happened, right? And so that was a massive shock to the system. And to your point of like the MBA cycle, you know, I had been thinking about applying to school, but because I started that new job, I actually kicked my application cycle down. I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply in the fall of 2020 because I just started this new job. And so like, I wanna ride this out and do this. So now, mind you, I start this new job and I'm laid off. And I'm like, I just missed the boat on applying to school. Like, you know, like what? Like,
I know, man. I know. I was like feeling for you too. I was like, damn, bro. Like, what's a music lyric or movie line that you feel like you kind of live by?
Cool. Oh, wow. I got a couple.
Lay them out. Lay them out.
I got a couple. So if you listen to the second verse of Pound Cake by Drake, he goes on this like, I mean, I think if I can even say it off the head, I think he's like, can I cuss on this thing or how does this work?
Hey man, we good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think he's like, fuck all that happy to be here shit that y'all want me on. I'm the big homie, they still be trying to low bro me, dog. Like I should fall in line. Like I should alert niggas and not tell them that I'm the greatest of my generation. You know, like I should be dressing different. Like I should be way less pessimistic. And I mean, he just goes on this where he's like, it's pretty much this like declaration of like, yo, I'm here. Like, who y'all trying to like sun me? Like, no, like I'm here. I'm in my bag. Like I'm trying to be the greatest. Like I'm gonna talk my shit. And it's like, that was always so just like, it just resonated with me because it's like, yeah, man, like I'm not this kid no more. You know what I mean? That song came out a long time ago, but it still resonates with me every stage of my life. You know, like,
well, so too, I forgot there's another reason why me and you synced because we have a very big fascination with Jay-Z.
Yes.
And Puffy and Mace. So you go to Poppy and I'll be like, yo, pace him up.
So thank you.
Excuse me. So Pound Cake. First of all, Drake and Jay-Z, just the collaborations every time are like,
crazy.
Lyrics are like, you have to like rewind it every time. Like they give it straight up gems.
Right.
But if you got any more lyrics, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So that one, I just love the song "More Money, More Problems" by Diddy and Biggie. "Juicy" by Biggie, and one of my favorite lines in there that I just think it's actually so slept on by most people. Diddy in that song, he says, 10 years from now, we'll still be on top. Yo, I told you that we won't stop. That song came out in 98. It is 20 something years later and Diddy is still on top of the game. Like, I think that's such a little gem that people really don't realize. And like, I'm so thankful for hip hop because like hip hop has given me so much confidence, right? Because they talk the shit, and they project it, and it's really like, you know, it's really exhilarating, like, and it's huge. And then I think I got, man, Jay-Z. I mean, I would just put Jay-Z as an artist into like, there's so many lines I couldn't even tell you one at the top of my head. But I would just put Jay-Z as like my absolute person that like, from hip hop, that is someone I just totally admire for so many different reasons, including the fact that the mother of his children is Beyonce.
Primo.
Yeah.
I would say, and I said this in another episode, a Jay-Z line that I like is like, difficult takes a day, impossible takes a week. Like, for me, it was like, okay, bet. Like, you could put it out there. It's not that hard. Get out of the way, bet on yourself, and let's keep it moving.
Right.
But when I think about our crew, I had to look this up. But when I think about our crew, especially the 160 Quant, Big Sean, you know, I'm in Detroit. I got to go with Detroit.
Great album. Great new album, by the way.
Great new album. I feel like this is the first, in my point, the first time he actually kind of was like, he was into, like, he was exact. It was like, it was about, like, he was very aware.
Right.
But in this song with him and Coldplay, Miracles, he said, until I realized I had to set my mind free, I was trusting statistics more than I trust me. And because for the 160 Quant crew, that only one person got 160, yet all of us are in top 15 schools, top 10 schools.
Right.
Like, it was a point where we were just like, nah, we just gonna apply. Like, we got the juice and we gonna believe it.
Right. You just have to take the bet and shoot your shot.
Shoot your shot. Shoot your shot.